time or she would even want to. But I'm like,
Yeah, I do, especially local stuff. I'm always like,
She speaks highly of you.
I mean,
She's like, as a kid, let me tell you, right? Now I'm gonna put her on Front Street. I grew up, Carmen, we lived near each other. I used to look up to her and all these things. I'm like,
everything you've already told me,
but from hearing it from her,
hearing it from
I'm like,
another
really?
person, yeah.
So then
yeah.
I started looking into you more, and I'm like, wow, like you do a lot.
Yeah.
So like, I don't even know where to start with you. Like, how did we get? I guess how did we get here? Like, explain to me how.
So from birth? No. So how do we get here to brown skin women?
Yes.
Well, it's been a lot. It's been a long journey. But my work in the community with brown skin women now goes way back to like when I was 13 living in the hood.
Okay.
That's when I started doing hair. I started doing my own hair, my Barbie doll's hair when I was 10. I started doing my siblings' hair around 13. And then I started working in a hair salon at 16.
Oh, wow.
So from 16 to my early 20s, I worked in that hair salon. And so my background has always been in hair. However, as most kids go through identity crisis at some point in their life,
Yep.
I had this picture of what my life was supposed to look like, and that picture did not include hair, right? And so, ironic, I'm still sitting here doing hair, right? But you know, our plans, we have our plans, and then God has his plans, right?
Absolutely.
And they don't always align.
Nope.
It was a whole lot of me trying to align with my own plan. And I learned a lot along the way, but what started my journey within that hair space was also the journey of self-discovery.
Okay.
Right? And growing up in the hood, as I said, you go through a whole lot of trauma.
Absolutely.
And exposure to things that kids typically shouldn't be exposed to. So a significant part of my transition from my teenage years into adulthood with having a daughter, my oldest daughter at 17,
Okay.
my senior year in high school. And I finished high school on time. But it was no longer what my plan was for myself. It was, I need to build the best life I can for this child, right? Because I messed around and had a child, so I got to do the right thing by her. And that was my goal. So I spent my early 20s trying to discover who I am and what I needed to do to grow and groom and develop as a person, personally, and then to support her. And so, as life happens, all these little sprinkles of, oh, here goes depression, you can take this too. And now your kid has special needs, you can have that too.
Oh, wow.
And now you're going to lose your job. Here you go, figure this out too. So it was a lot of that navigating. And again, because my goal was to live a better life, that was always the big picture. So whatever I was hit with, I'm like, oh, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to go around and do this. So early 20s, left the beauty industry, finished college full time. I have a degree in psychology, of all things.
Wow.
And worked in corporate America. So I worked in corporate America for 10 years.
Okay.
And that was because that was the picture I thought was supposed to be my life. I thought I was supposed to be a corporate executive, wearing heels and skirts and have my hair done and, you know, go work a 9 to 5, come home, do whatever. And yeah, I did do that, but I quickly learned that I'm not the corporate type. I'm well spoken, and I've always been, because I was, you know, my mom put me through a lot of programs when I was younger. But outside of that, drinking that whole corporate Kool-Aid thing, it wasn't for me. And I really missed the creative side of myself that I had to put on hold. And so I tapped into making clothing, which was something that I was really good at. Yeah. That was, you know, a venture that I went through for maybe like 5 or so years. And I realized, oh, you're just good at doing this. It should be a hobby. It should not be a profession or a career.
Right.
So I pulled back. I've never been afraid to stop doing something that wasn't serving me or wasn't fulfilling me, and pivot and try and figure out what was. All the time, it always was surrounding hair, but I ran from the beauty industry because I didn't think that was what I was supposed to be doing. So my journey towards self-discovery and healing and being the best person I could be, being the best mom to my daughter, it was all an emphasis on how can I be the best version of Carmen that I can be, right? So at every journey, with every career, every twist, every turn, it always pointed back to how am I showing up in this world? Am I doing the best that I can do to be the best me? Right. And am I also portraying that out on the outside? And so there was therapy, and there was changing my diet with food and all of that. And so now, fast forward, I started a blog in 2013, and towards that journey of self-discovery, I wanted to live my life in this most natural way. So I stopped relaxing my hair. I went natural, right? I cut all my hair. I had a fade.
Really?
I looked like a boy. And nobody knew it because I wore wigs. Because I wasn't, and I was single. I'm never going to find a boyfriend. I'm never going to find a husband. That's what I thought, right? And this was like 2006, 2007. So way before the natural hair industry became this powerful force that it is now. And way before YouTube. So I was like figuring it out, right? But there was the caring what I put into my body. So I built a better relationship with food. A lot of this was influenced by my daughter's disability. But it ended up being a blessing and a curse, right? I didn't see it while I was going through it, but within a few years I was like, wow, okay, so this has helped me. So all that discovery, when I cut off my hair, I'm eating better, I'm giving more care and concern about the environment, and I started blogging about that, right? And my blog was always called Brown Skin Women, literally from the beginning. I changed the name within like 4 or so months of starting it, but it was Brown Skin Women, and it was more like a public diary because I was too lazy to write stuff down in a journal. It was easier to type. That was my selfish motive for blogging. And then people started responding to the blog, and I'm like, well, y'all not supposed to be here. This is supposed to be for me, but like, duh, idiot, you put it on the internet. So, like so that started happening, and then I started connecting with them. I'm like, I want to meet with these people in real life. Y'all want to have a meetup? And so I'm thinking like 3 people will show up, and I'd have been cool with that. There were like 30-something women at this first meetup. Wow. And I asked them one question: what else do you want me to do? Like, what more can I do? And they said, more events like this. And that started the journey of me taking my blog from the virtual space to in real life. Yes. And building all these experiences around hair, wellness, and beauty, and working with brands. And so bridging the consumer and the brand, and me being the middle person. And then in 2018, I still kept blogging, I still kept the events going, but I decided to re-enter hair. Naturally, because that was the biggest category, most popular category on my blog. And I was like, maybe I should start doing hair again, right? Let me test it, a little part-time, get my feet wet. Nah, I'm not gonna go all out, and I had clientele immediately because I had an audience. Yes. I had this brown skin women community, and most of them were local, right? And so that was 2018 when I decided to open the salon. By 2019, business is booming, I'm doing great. But what ended up shifting that was I realized my client's hair was in these very detrimental, damaged states in between these protective styles that they were wearing. And so I'm like, okay, let's focus on hair care, home hair care. So I created a home hair care program, and it was really just teaching in person at first. Yes. And then my clients will email and say, well, I forgot what you said to do with this. I'm like, all right, let me put these videos online. Right. Put them online. 2019, I got married, bought our house, moved from Hartford, born and raised in Hartford, by the way. Bought our house in East Granby, conceived our daughter, pandemic happened. Yes. Right? And now everybody's at home. And we all thought it was just this quick fluke thing. We'll be back to normal in like a few days. A few days turned into a few years. But that Home Hair Care Academy, because people were forced to be at home, and salons that were operating with integrity were closed like the government told us to be. I was one of them. But I was getting a lot of, what should I do with my hair? I haven't been able to come in and get a hair appointment, right? And so, look, well, I already have these videos online. So I just started promoting them. I posted one video on TikTok. It was 14 seconds long. First video I ever posted on TikTok, and it went viral. And all I told them was, you want moisturized, healthy hair, but you use oils and butters, and you cleanse every 2 to 3 weeks. And it pissed the internet off. And I didn't go viral for the right reason. I went viral because I upset people. So if you are familiar with TikTok, they're cut from a different cloth. Yeah, it's different. They're cutthroat over there with how the comments, everything. Man, they're wild. So it was a rough 48 hours for me, because I was like, I can't let them drag me. I gotta, But it did lead people to my academy, the course that I had. I put it in a link in my bio. Smart. And that literally picked off. So fast forward to now. I have successfully trained consumers in over 19 countries across the world. And so now I'm training professionals to teach them everything I know about hair, so they can do what I do for my clients who are local and from very far. People get in planes just to come sit in my chair. Wow. So that's the short version of the story to bring you to today. That was short? That was the short version?
That's a lot to take in.
It's a lot to take in, but the journey literally led me here, and it's all connected, which has been really inspiring.
All right. We're going to have to rewind.
Yeah, wherever you
We're going to have to rewind all the way back because you said a lot of great stuff. But I do want to touch on motherhood. That's like the first thing I want to talk about.
Yeah.
How was that for you? You know, having
Hard.
a daughter at 17.
Yeah.
Did you feel, was it embarrassing for you? Like, because I know when you have, I don't know how old you are. I just know.
I'm 37
okay.
now. I had her when I was 17, yeah.
And I feel like around that time, when women had children early, to me, I feel like they were judged. Now I don't feel like it's like that these days. I feel like it's more accepted. But
Right.
I could be wrong. But how did you feel?
So I felt two ways, honestly. First, I was disappointed in myself. Because remember, I've always had this picture of what my life should look like,
Right.
and it never had children in that picture. At least not towards the healing part and becoming a better person. But so I got pregnant. And I decided I was going to keep her, and I did. And so I went from that embarrassment to, well, it doesn't really matter because the reality is she's here and you got to kind of do it.
Right.
But then there became the shame of becoming a statistic, right? Like I had a kid in a high school, probably never going to go to college, probably going to stay in the hood forever,
Exactly, right.
Be on welfare, right? Like that was my fear. And so now I went from having this desire to live a better life than I had ever been exposed to or ever seen in real life to being determined to change this narrative so that I didn't end up being like the friends that I went to school with, not all of them, right? But the ones who usually get trapped because you have a kid at a young age, you're usually a single mom, and you're struggling. And so welfare is the next best, easiest option. So there was both. There was embarrassment, there was fear, there was shame, but my desire to be a better person and then my desire to prove that I can be a better person outweighed the other side, and that was what pushed me forward. It wasn't easy though, and it wasn't easy primarily because my child wasn't mainstream. She had special needs from the very beginning, and so now I have this kid with these medical and physical disabilities that I was ashamed of in the beginning, especially because I have a huge family. I have 10 siblings.
Wow.
And I have over 20 nieces and nephews. And out of all of us, I happen to be the only one with a kid with disabilities. So there was the shame in that, and the embarrassment and like not feeling comfortable going out around people because I don't want to have to explain why she's behaving the way she is and all those things. And I was a single mom, soul mom, as my therapist says, because Dad wasn't even around. So it wasn't like he was partially around, he just wasn't around at all. So I'm doing it by myself, and my family were helping to the best of their ability. But that was the journey in the beginning. I don't lie about it because first of all, why lie?
Right? Exactly.
There's no point and no value in it. And a part of the story is how I was able to grow and groom from there. But to answer your question, there was fear, there was shame, there was embarrassment, but there was also determination.
You know, I'm trying to picture, because I just had a son last year, and I think my biggest fear, I just wanted him to be healthy. And just, or if I had a son or a daughter, I didn't really care. So I couldn't imagine, like how, when you found out that, you know, your child was special needs, like what was going through you?
I went into depression for a year. And nobody knew. I was on autopilot. I worked a full-time job. I moved into the West End, so I had a nice 2-bedroom apartment. She was in school for full-time. She was diagnosed officially when she was 3, but I knew from birth that something was wrong because a kid's normal milestone, like developmental milestone, she never reached them.
Right.
Or she did like 6 or so months behind when she typically should have.
Okay.
So when her pediatrician finally put a name to what she had. First it was developmental disabilities, and then it was autism.
Okay.
And it kept going, but that initial diagnosis was like, nope, I'm not going to accept this. And my way to respond to that was to go in literal hibernation. So I was on autopilot. I still I still managed, and I think because my determination was to be the best version I could be, that was still in the back of my mind, but that got clouded by all this fear, this doubt, this shame. And so I still managed to keep my full-time job the entire year. When I say year, it was like 13 months of depression. Going home, so wake up in the morning, get her ready for school, get myself ready for work, go to work, come home, pick her up, cook dinner, go to sleep for 13 months.
Wow.
And that's the honest God truth. That
Yeah.
was the result of that diagnosis, that fear, that shame, that hurt. I just secluded myself. I still took care of her the best way that I could, but nobody knew. So nobody knew that I needed help.
So when did you go to, were you going to therapy before that? So what made you actually like?
So I started going to therapy right around that time. She was 3 at the time. And so I'm 20 at this point. And I just woke up one day and I was like, I'm tired of feeling like this. Like, I'm tired of feeling like crap. This isn't what I want for my life. You look around, I have this nice car that I could afford because I was working a full-time corporate job. And I had this nice apartment that was fully furnished, again, because I could afford it, but this isn't all I want for myself. Like, I don't want to feel like crap. I want the reward of feeling good too. Yeah. So I started researching, like, I feel down, I feel lonely, I feel all these things. What should I do? And so I found a support group for parents with kids with autism. I started there. I started utilizing resources in the community for kids with special needs. And then I was like, therapy, let me consider therapy. And, I had to really keep therapy on lock because that wasn't something we did. That was only for white people, right? Like, we don't have problems. We pray about it, we go to church about it, and we sweep it under the rug. Yep. And so I knew going to therapy meant I got to keep this on the hush-hush, much like the depression I went through, right? So now I'm carrying fear, shame, disappointment, just in a different way. Now it's because I'm going to therapy trying to get help. And so, I started therapy, and I would say within maybe like 6 or so months, that's when things started to turn around. Okay. Because I began to have more excitement towards change. And that was what, like, kind of like that carrot dangling in front of me, like, there's a different side, and I'm determined to feel what that feels like. But that was it. I got tired of feeling sick of myself. That was really what it was. Okay.
So you talked about now, you were married. Mm-hmm. You are married.
I am married, yeah.
So how was that process? All right. So you finally get out of this depression.
Yeah.
And you were doing all these great things, it seems like, along the way.
Yep.
So when did your husband now come into your life?
So let's see, Sanaya is my oldest daughter. She did pass away. I don't know if Yannick told you, she passed away Thanksgiving Day last year. I will try not to get emotional. I probably will. I feel like the only reason, sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Losing a child is hard. It's hard. It will be hard on anybody. Yannick, I have some back here. You just grab a paper towel. Losing a child is really hard. However, it wasn't as hard for me, or I should say isn't as hard as for me, because I knew, thank you, I knew when Sanaya was 10 that her lifespan wasn't going to be very long. Her neurologist confirmed that. And he literally said, I don't know what this means. It means she could live for a year, she can live for 2 years, she can live for 9 years. She lived for 9. He had that right. Wow. So anyway, sorry, I brought her up and.
No, I don't.
It's okay, and I'm okay talking about it because, like, I'm okay talking. The reason I said yes to do this with you, Anthony, was because a lot of the things I knew we were going to discuss is so taboo in our community. All right. And I know that you're shining a light on those things, which is why it was really important for me to not only have this discussion, but support what you're doing, because this is what's going to continue changing that narrative, especially for our community. But so with Sanaya, I was scared to date. Wow. Because not only did I have a kid, I had a kid with special needs. That's a lot of baggage. And yeah, she's 10, and typically 10-year-olds can do a lot for themselves. She couldn't do anything for herself. She couldn't feed herself. She could walk still. But she had by the time she was 13, she was confined to a wheelchair. So I met my husband. No, that's not true. She was confined to a wheelchair by 10, which is why I got that diagnosis and prognosis from her neurologist, because I'm like, I need answers. Like, why is her life still continuing to regress? So, and I did date a few people, but I kept my personal life separate from my relational life, which that's never going to last, right? Which is why those relationships never lasted, because I didn't want to cross those lines. But then 13, doing the work in the community that I'm doing. At this point now I'm in event planning.
Yes, yes.
Right, I'm in event planning. I started with corporate event planning and I did that for a long time. And one of my friends reached out, close friends, she reached out and she said, Carmen, there's this guy who said he's been trying to reach you. He wants you to plan or, consult with you to plan an event for his nonprofit organization. And I was like, trying to reach me how? He still claims to this day he sent me a message on Facebook. I still haven't found it. But anyway, he knew my friend, so he reached out to her. And I was like, just give him my number. He called me. We met. And granted, at the time, he was in a whole relationship. I thought he was cute, but you're taken. I'm respectful of that. So, continue on my way. And so I work with him. But what happened is when I started meeting with him to plan that event, Sanaya was in the hospital. And this was at a period when she was in the hospital for like a month.
Right.
And so I'm like, I can commit to helping plan this event, but a lot of these meetings are going to have to happen at the cafeteria of Unpain inside of Harvard Hospital. She was in Children's Hospital. And he was like, okay, no problem. And he would show up with like Starbucks gift cards and teddy bears and cards. And I'm like, this is just a really great guy. And granted, he was, again, in a relationship with someone, never made a pass at me, never hit on me, never anything. It was never anything like that. He just genuinely cared. So the event happened, and then that ended our partnership. Fast forward, the next year, the event was coming up again, and he reached out and wanted me to plan the event again. And at this point, they're engaged now. They were dating at the time, they're engaged. Okay. Cool, whatever. Right. Plan the event, and then the event happens, it's in the past. And then I don't know, maybe 4 months later, I hear from him. His sister wanted to get into event planning, so he asked if she could intern for me. Right. I let her intern for me. Wow. I didn't let her plan any of his events though, because it would have been a conflict of interest. So 4 months in, so the event was in January, May, her internship ended. It was just one semester. And she says to me, it's crazy what happened to Matt and, his significant other, right? And I was like, what happened? After that contract ended, we weren't friends before, so there was nothing to default to. She's like, oh, they broke up. And I was like, I didn't know. I said, I haven't spoken to your brother in months. She was like, oh, I didn't know that. And I was like, okay. And then we continued our meeting. Right. And then a week later, I got a text message from him. And that text message was like, he basically thanked me for letting her finish her internship. And that, that was that. And that when he comes back from where he was out of the state, he would love to sit down and chat and see if I'd be interested in planning next year. And so I said, okay. But my friends kept saying, that's a date. And I was like, it's coffee at 8:30 in the morning on a Monday. It's not a date. It was a date. I didn't know it was.
You didn't know? How did you not know? How did you not see the signs? Because I was
clueless. Let me tell you, there were 2 reasons. I was clueless, but I was clueless for one reason. I had my heart broken so many times before I met him that I told God, whatever man he sent me, if he was for me, he better have made it as clear as me walking into a brick wall. So I was walking through life shielding. Right. I didn't want any man to it needed to be you had to break your neck to make it known that you were interested in me and not just in catcalling or asking for my number. And so it was that we ended up, he had just moved back from Dallas, so back into downtown Hartford. And after that meeting, or when that meeting was concluding, he said, I just moved back to Hartford. And all my friends are further out in the state. So if there are things happening in the community, which he knew I was involved in a lot, let me know. I would love to come to some things. And I was like, okay. Yep. And so I did that. And after a month of doing that, naturally, there's an interest. He was interested all along. Yeah, but again, in my mind, you got to make it very clear, right?
That's fair. That's
very
fair.
Clear.
Yeah.
And he did. And even I remember a month in, he tried to kiss me, and I was like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I was trying to kiss you. So I realized that made him feel bad. I was like, I'm sorry. I'm not about to end up in a situation. I was very
I respect this guy, man.
And so he walks me home we were it was one of the jazz nights in Bushnell Park. He walked me home. I lived right across the street. And I was like, I'm sorry, because I realized I probably made him feel bad by like dodging his kiss and then not being interested in that happening.
Wow.
But I did. I told him that I'm just not interested in a casual thing, and if that's what he wants, that's fine. He's just not going to get it with me. He was like, nope, I would like to be in a relationship with you. And I was like, okay, you can kiss me now, and that was it.
Wow.
But it was easy. It was easy for me to make that decision because he already knew I had a kid. He already knew I had a kid with special needs.
Right.
He already knew that I was struggling with her health. And he still wanted to be in a relationship with me.
Wow.
And so he knew what came with that deal. There was no tough conversation, you know? So that was how that happened.
That is amazing. There's some guys that are not even willing to.
No, I know. And I knew that, and I was afraid of that. That's why I hid it.
Okay, wow. That's an amazing story. I got to tip my hat off to him. No, seriously. And
he's still, he became even more incredible once we started dating and once I crossed those lines, which it took me another 6 months to do. He called me out and told me, I know you have a daughter. I know she has special needs. Like, you need to let me help you with her. And I'm like, why? He ended up being even more of an incredible human being, right? And so, hope there's probably one out there who's gonna watch this. There's hope, ladies.
Yeah, because it doesn't seem the way in today's world.
Yeah.
You tell that story to any other woman, they're like, no way.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. So now you guys have a child of your own.
Yes, Madison. She'll be 3 on Saturday. Yes.
So, how was that? Now you have another child.
I am.
And then while your other daughter was alive, how was that dynamic?
Phenomenal from the very beginning. And I will say for one reason, for 2 reasons, I'm a very intentional person, right? I am very thorough with trying to make the best decision at every turn, right? So I had to decide if I wanted to have another child. Yeah. And I knew that I wanted to. My Sanaya was, 17 when I had Madison. But I was determined to, if I was going to have another child, it was going to be with somebody who was worth creating a child with.
Right.
And Matt was, that was clear from the very beginning. And so I knew that it would be a loving and supportive environment to bring another person into where I wouldn't be doing it by myself. And it was literally that and has been that since the very beginning. And so Madison, it's never been a half sister. This is your sister. This is your whole sister. We love her with our whole heart.
Yes.
And it was easy to blend. There was and still to this day, there was never even a second where I felt like I made the wrong decision. Because Sanaya was well loved and well supported in our household. And Madison, bringing her into the picture just meant there was more love to spread around. And so it was an easy transition because of the support system inside of our home.
Yeah, I need a tissue. I'm dead serious. I'm about to. Yeah. Hold on. I don't even usually do this, man. That's amazing, man. Just to see how you fought through all that, Carmen, is amazing, man.
And it was tough. I don't hide that part of it because it makes this part more rewarding.
Yeah, that's because I did my research. I just didn't know. I didn't know how. I was talking to Neat, should I ask her these questions and she's fill it out. So so now I gotta get myself together.
Now you got my eyes tearing up.
I'm sorry. So the name brown skin. You said you always had that
brown
name.
Skin Women.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, years ago, right when I first started doing video, I wanted to shoot a documentary on colorism, right?
Okay.
That was my first topic.
Yep.
So when I hear your name, I hear color.
Yeah.
So how did you come up with the name?
So this is actually another great story. The blog, I'm touching my mic, sorry.
You know
blog.
I'm sorry. Can you, Tarkin, come here. Is the mic? I just want to make sure the mic, because it looks like it's poking Carmen in her.
Oh, I feel fine.
It's not poking you?
No.
Oh, we're good.
It's there. It's just not. It doesn't.
Okay.
It's not uncomfortable.
How are the levels, Tarkin?
Good?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so how did you come up with it?
So the blog was originally called Natural Hair Brown Beauty. Singular, not plural, because it was about me.
Yes.
So two things happened I started in 2013. Two things happened in 2014, so within 6 months of starting the blog. In January, Barack Obama became our president.
Yep.
And because I had volunteered on his campaign trail to call people to elect this man as our first black president, I was invited to apply to work the inaugural ball, the first inaugural ball. And I applied, and out of 20,000 people, they only chose like a couple thousand. I was one of them. So I'm at this inaugural ball, and I'm just, checking people in and doing some odd things. Got to meet Michelle Obama. Can't have cameras or anything, so there's no video, no photo proof of it, but it's in my head.
It happened. And
I'm happy with that. It makes me smile. So that happened in January. And then the same year in August, Martin Luther King's 50th anniversary of his I Have a Dream speech was that year. And so I made myself back to DC to be a part of this incredible moment, right? And I get there, and there were so many people in DC that the cell reception was non-existent.
Wow.
It was that many people, and you had and then the Secret Service, because you're in DC, not too far from the White House. So the towers you weren't getting much reception there. But I was every time I think about it or talk about it, I get chills. It was such an empowering and inspiring experience to be a part of. I was proud to be a black person. That was the feeling that I got being there. And granted, every race, every nationality, every color you could imagine, there were people there just with their signs, just all in support of this man and his legacy, the work that he had done, so many years ago. And I was like, I want to do something for like black people and specifically black women. Yep. And I want my blog to be a reflection of that. And I was like, brown skinned women. So now I already told you there was no reception.
Yeah.
So I'm on my old throwback iPhone at the
I was gonna say, what phone was that?
I don't even remember what number it was, but this was 2014.
Yep.
And so I'm like fighting for service to try and secure brown skin women on Instagram, brown skin women on Facebook.
Oh, you were trying to lock it in.
I was trying to lock it in, and I was trying to lock the domain in. First, I was trying to see if they were available, and they were. And so I'm not even exaggerating, it probably took me 3 hours to finally get connection to complete all three. My web host company, I bought the brownskinwoman.com domain while I'm in DC.
I was gonna say, you did all this.
All of that.
Wow.
The day of his, and I came home and I was like, that's it. But that's the inspiration behind the name change. Okay,
so that's 3 hours?
3 hours. And people are, why do you keep looking at your phone? I'm like, I'm trying to do something. That's all I kept saying. I didn't want to spill it. I didn't want to tell you.
You fast, man.
But I was so sure that it needed to happen, and here we are.
All right, so you talk about how when you were younger, I'm not gonna lie, I looked at your story the other day, right? So you were talking about the Just For Me kids on the box. How you
I wanted to look like them.
You wanted to look like that. So like, where do you think that came from? The media? Like
absolutely.
Your fan? Like, was it people close? Like, I guess growing up, and then you said you went natural, right? So when did you figure out, okay, I'm done with trying to look like this. I want to start over, or A, B, and C? Because you kind of talked about it, but you went.
I zipped past it.
Yeah, you was laying all the layers. You was giving me everything.
Yeah.
So I kind of want you to kind of talk about, that moment in your life when you were like, you know what? I want the fade. I'm starting over.
Yeah, I didn't want the fade, but I had the fade.
Yeah, I had the fade.
So to answer your first question, it stemmed from the European standard of beauty. That was all you saw on television and in magazines. Yeah. So granted, my older siblings, they had like the Jet magazines and What's Up magazines, and so I was still able to see black people, but it was black people with relaxers. Right? It wasn't black people with this. And if it was a black person, it was a man with a short afro, which that wasn't the look I wanted to have. Right. That wasn't what I saw. And so I wanted the straight hair. I wanted to look like the little black girls on the Just For Me box. And 13, I begged my mom for like a year for a relaxer. She finally gave in. So for 13 to, I think, 23 is when I finally cut off all my hair. I wore a relaxer, so I was either roller wraps or flat wraps, right? Those were the staples.
Yep.
But I had color too. So I had like honey blonde highlights in my hair. And I had those highlights. I would say I started coloring my hair on top of my relaxer when I was a sophomore in high school, all the way through my 20s. And my hair always seemed to stay this one length. And I was okay with it because it was to me, it was cute. I look back at those pictures now and I'm like, I looked like trash, but I was cute back in the day.
Tell them, Carmen, you know it.
So I had, my hair was like damaged in the back and it's over processed. So that was to be expected. So I cut my hair in a bob, cute bob. My hair still looked good, right? A year later, I don't know what it is about me in these 12 months, like showing up routinely through my life, but a year later, my hair had grown back to where it was, but that damage was there again in the same spot.
Oh man.
And I was like, I was so upset. I went in the bathroom and I just took literally just regular household scissors and just cut my hair. And I cut it down to new growth. But I had just got a relaxer like 2 weeks prior, so there was no new growth. That's why I ended up with a fade. I cut my hair off and I stood in that bathroom for like 20 minutes and I cried because I was just like, it was impulsive. Wow. I did it out of frustration. I didn't think about what I had done. So my journey into natural hair, it wasn't like glitter and gold. It was regret and hurt, right? Yeah. At first. And then I was like, well, decision done, decision made. Now you got to live with it. So what's next? And so I'm like, well, I'm not walking out the house looking like this.
Why not?
I was afraid I was going to look like a boy. I was afraid I wasn't going to get a man, right? Yeah. And this was before I started even wearing makeup. So I was just like, I mean, I was a cute boy, but I'm not a boy, you know? That was my narrative in my head. And so I'm like, I gotta put some hair on my head, right? And so I went into wigs. But again, it was, you know, I look back throughout my journey now, and my hair is much longer now. And I'm like, man, I wish I would have embraced my hair in its natural state. I wish I would have explored that part of the journey.
Right.
Just because I know what all the other parts of my hair journey has done for me in terms of like just being a part of who I am at my core. Yeah. But I'm not cutting it off again, not by choice. Yeah. So unless God does something that forces me to cut it off.
You won't just be taking the scissors.
Nope. But that was it. It was, I was tired of the damage that these chemicals eventually always do to the hair. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so I did the big chop, and honestly, it ended up being one of the best things I could have ever done for myself, because I turned into all this.
Question. So all this, right? You talked about that.
Brown skin woman.
When, because you were in corporate America, when was that moment when you were like, all right, I'm out, I'm done, taking the leap? So
it's wild that you are mentioning this, because I thought about this a couple days ago. I remember literally sitting at my desk, and I was on Twitter. I shouldn't have been on Twitter. Uh-oh. I was on Twitter, and I literally wrote, physically here, mentally gone. This was a long time ago, so I've been like, and I never deleted any tweets, so I've always wanted to comb through my tweets and find this tweet, because that was the moment when I was just like, I can't do this anymore.
So you, after that tweet, how long did it take for you to? You did it the same moment.
It was right away. It was within the same within the same few weeks. Wow. It was within the same few weeks.
What was that feeling like? Was it empowering? Were you scared?
There's always, every decision I've made, there's always been this little nagging fear in the back of my mind, but it's never been louder than my desire, my excitement to explore what's on the other side.
Now, do you feel, because, there's this thing where people feel like, oh, you work a 9 to 5, and not that I feel like people talk down on it, but people make it look like, I don't think everyone can do what you did. Right. But people sell this thing like, quit your job and you can just start a business. I just feel like everyone doesn't have that drive, or you had like a lot of issues going on, like that drove you, I won't call it issues, but trauma.
There were issues. They were.
That drove you to this point.
Yep.
I just don't think everyone can do what you did.
Honestly, what I did was dumb.
Oh, shit.
The way I did it was dumb.
Why you say that?
Because I didn't think you need to survive.
Right. So if you had to do it again.
If I had to do it again, I would have saved up more money.
Okay.
Okay. And I would have had somewhat of a structure in my business that was even like lucrative on a part-time basis.
Right.
I was starting from nothing.
You were mentally drained though.
I was.
So
And I was starting from nothing in the entrepreneurial, respect, but I was operating from nothing in my corporate job. I was exhausted. I didn't want to be there. I was like, again, it reminded me of when I was in that depressive state for a year where I was on autopilot just doing my job, but I had reached the ceiling with my job. There were no more opportunities for growth, and that creative part was like, it was just like frozen. Right? Yeah. And I was exhausted. Life was just like, this is just not at all what I think I should feel like.
Question. Do you feel if your first daughter wasn't special needs, you would have stayed?
That's a question I never, ever thought of before.
Because now you're not, because remember your life was, work, cook, clean, sleep. It was just this thing.
Yeah.
Like, if, things were different, will we even have this?
You want to know what's funny? I think I would have still ended up on the same path. It just would have been a different road.
Yeah.
Because I still always felt like the corporate road was the right route for me.
Right.
I would have still gone through corporate America and gone down that corporate path and realized,
this isn't it.
Right? It would have been an easier decision to make because when I had that moment where I was physically there, mentally gone, that was when I just I tapped out. Yeah. But I've been feeling that for a few years prior.
Okay.
So I held on because I knew that I needed to make some money.
Yes.
Right? And so from that, I went right into making clothing. So I was able to start making money quickly, but it wasn't the money I was making working 40 hours a week. But I was still able to pay my bills. I was still able to go to the occasional happy hour, right?
Right.
So I wasn't like poor. I was working poor, but I wasn't poor.
Right.
And I had the hustle mindset. So I was like, the more I promote, the more money I make. And that was exactly what happened.
Yeah.
The more shows I put on, the more people want to buy my stuff.
Makes sense.
So that's why I had so many shows. And so I think I would have still ended up on the same path. It would have probably been sooner though.
Yeah.
Because I needed to hold on.
That makes sense.
To supporting her.
Yeah.
In our lifestyle.
I know you want to ask something.
No, I'm
you sure, because you had some input.
I just want, your story to me is just amazing. I knew it was amazing, but hearing it in person, if you think about someone who grew up in Hartford or who is still in that situation right now, hearing you, I think this interview is important for that aspect. Hearing you can motivate someone because, I mean, come on. Someone growing up in Hartford and then look at you, you own your storefront, you own your salon, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Thank you.
And now you have this community, right?
Yes.
Because, so where are we at now with it? From, you don't do the blogs anymore still?
I do, but
so
I'm not doing the blogs anymore. I pay somebody to. I have people on the team who's doing all the things, right? So Brown Skin Women still has a blog. The blog focuses on hair and wellness.
Yep.
I am giving them the content I want to focus on. I'm giving them the outline of each blog post, and based on what they know about our culture and what they know about my narrative and what I push in this space, in this community, they're able to execute those blogs. And they don't go out without me reading every single one first to make sure. I'm fact checking, right? So we still blog. Blogging is one of our marketing engines, if you will.
Yeah.
Sometimes we podcast, sometimes we turn the blog into a podcast if it's like a really good one.
Yeah.
That we want to live on, like this one, yes. But my marketing is on social media primarily. And we still have events that I put that to a complete halt once the pandemic happened, and we just had our first one last October. And then the next set we had in February. But today, the narrative that I'm primarily focused about and on is this concept of evolved self-care, where how we see ourselves, how we treat ourselves, it's connected. Yep. We're thinking about our lifestyle as a whole. So when somebody comes to me and they want help with their hair, I'm not just, you're not just going to sit in my chair and I do your hair. I'm right. digging into your life.
Okay.
I need to know about your lifestyle, right? And what that means, what your hair and how your hair translate and kind of shows up in that space. Because our hair goes everywhere we go.
Absolutely.
But a lot of us we separate our hair from how we live. And usually there's some unexpected expectation of the hair in the midst of that, right? So lifestyle and evolved self-care is really connecting. And honestly, this is where I'm a stats geek. I read a lot. And I'm very interested in the direction the world is going in. And so within the next 5 to 10 years, there will be more of an evolved concept for how we make decisions, how we buy, right? How we treat ourselves personally and professionally. And so with brown skinned women, I'm connecting the hair and the lifestyle piece, right? It's more than just our hair. But be realistic about where you work, how often you work out. If you work out at all, what you're eating, how that's all going to fuel the outcome of your hair 6, 7, 8 months down the line. And so brown skin women, back in November, I broke it up into 2 different businesses. It was all being operated under one.
Okay.
So Brown Skin Women LLC, which is the company, which is you find the salon there, you find the training for professionals there.
Okay.
And now we have a foundation. So it's Brown Skin Women Foundation.
Okay.
It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and that focuses on the lifestyle work. So we are offering 2 things to start, at least for the next couple of years. Evolution of Black hair. That is to showcase how Black people's hair has been impacted by systemic racism and how it's still being exploited to this day. So it's an exhibit that showcases different installations that takes you through the different phases, starting with pre-slavery, during slavery, post-slavery, right, to modern day exploitation. Because exploitation is these brands making all these products that don't really provide us much benefit. But the Black beauty industry is a $1.8 trillion industry.
I've heard that T word. And
that number keeps going up, and it's going to keep going up.
Really?
Black people, Black women especially, we control that. We spend our money on cosmetics. We spend our money on these things. So even if a product company only desires to get 1% of 1.8 trillion, they're still good.
Right.
They're great.
Right.
Right? And so that's the evolution of Black hair. For me, it's shining a light on what we either turn a blind eye to or we may not realize is deeply embedded in way back when.
Yeah,
it's just showing up in a different way.
Right.
Right? And so I take you through that history, but then I also take you through the celebration because Black hair is fabulous. It
sure is.
Right? And so being able to wear your hair in your braids, right? My wash and go, your beautiful curly fro, her twist, right? Yep. It is a celebration, so we need to celebrate that. So now anybody of any race comes to this exhibit. Black people, you come to it learning the history piece you may not have never known.
Yeah.
Then you get to the exhibits or the installations where it's more exciting. You get to celebrate. You want to take pictures inside of the installation rooms, which are fun. But people who don't look like us or don't understand our culture, they get a history lesson.
Right.
Right? And so that's the one piece of the foundation. And then the other piece is our brown skin experiences. And that's really to make more diverse and inclusive opportunities for us to tap into resources that help us improve our life. So think yoga, right? Yeah. Think working with a nutritionist. The spaces that are predominantly white.
I knew exactly what you were doing.
Call it what it is.
Just do it.
And making sure that Black people are introduced to them, have access to them, and are able to incorporate it into their life so they can also improve their quality of life. But then helping non-Black people understand that we belong to take in this space and we need to take up room in this space too. It's not just about you. And doing it in a way that allows me to advocate and use my voice and my connections and my position to bridge that gap.
Have you always been this business savvy?
I have always been this way.
Wow.
Always, since I was a little girl.
Yeah, like, I just see like umbrella, arm, like this. Like, you're just like, I'm looking around and I'm like, wow, like.
Since I was a little girl.
Yeah, okay. I do have a question. Now what's the time?
51 minutes.
Oh, this is great.
Wow.
This is perfect. Like this is perfect. Yeah. Now your daughter is biracial and your husband is white, right? Mm-hmm. So how is that interracial? How do people perceive? Like, how do you maneuver around that? I feel because, I mean, today I know it's more accepted.
Yeah.
So how does that work? How was that for you?
So.
Did you ever was that a part of your,
no.
Remember you said you had this
picture of what my life should look like? No. My friends, my black friends used to tell me anytime I dated, and I had never dated a white guy or anybody outside of my race for that matter before, but I'll never forget one time in my mid-20s, I was dating this guy and he was black, and my friends were shocked that he was black. And I was like, and these were friends that I made in adulthood, so not
not the core,
And I'm like, why? Well, I always thought you ended up with a white guy. That was the response. And I'm like, why? I never saw what they saw.
Yeah.
And I still sometimes question it to this day because it was never like, oh, I have to have a black guy. My oldest daughter's father is black, right? She's black mixed with black, literally.
Right?
Right?
Yeah.
So there was never a picture of what somebody was supposed to look like at all. There was never even a desire to have a biracial child. Right. It was just, I want to be the best version of myself, and whatever that means and whoever that is with, that's who it'll be with, right? But let me answer your question about the perception.
Yes.
I personally, the number one thing that was important to me was making sure that I was in a relationship with somebody who was culturally aware.
Okay.
Culturally aware and also respectful. And he's always been that, right? From the very beginning. In fact, his significant other who was in his life before we started dating, she was black.
Oh, okay. All right.
So he already understood black culture, and the work that he had done in his profession and still does, it works with the black community. Wow. And so I met some incredible black people through him that sings his praises still to this day about just how phenomenal of a person he is, right? So he literally checks off all the boxes. Right. And I'm not just trying to say that.
No, I got you.
But so I know that people may have opinions about my very black, pro-black self being in a very white relationship. But I'm pro-black, I'm not anti-white. I'm not anti any race, right? First of all. And no one has had the balls or the guts to come and say something to my face about my decision, right? For me, it was never oh my God, he's white, what should I do? It was like, are you a good human being or are you not?
Right.
That was it. So I've had maybe 2 instances where in public and like large events, and they were both black men, obviously not that I was with a white man. Right. One said something, and it's a Jamaican guy. He said something in Patois. I don't even remember. I couldn't really fully understand. I was like, "What did you just say?" And then he turned his head and didn't say anything. I don't think he was expecting me to say anything.
Right.
He maybe wanted him to say something, but I'm black and I'm from the hood, so I'm going to say something. And he said nothing. And then the other time, the other guy just looked and rolled his eyes. I'm like, "Well, hello to you too, sir." And that was it. So I've never had, to have discussions or uncomfortable discussions. Like, I talk to my husband about very black stuff all the time. Yeah. Like, you have a black daughter. Yeah, she's black and white, but the world's going to see her as black. I'm raising her to understand that she's both, understand the culture, and be prepared to have conversations and defend both sides if you have to, because people will always have opinions, but nobody's ever come at me. I've only ever I'm surprised. I was shocked to learn your husband was white. And I'm like, why? Nobody ever gives an answer. No one ever answers that.
I think, and I'm not going to lie, I was iffy to ask the question, but I wanted to know how that is for you. Because like you said, brown skinned woman, right? So I feel like some people, they won't say it, right? But in the back of their mind,
absolutely,
they're thinking it.
Yeah.
So
it's been great. My husband is honestly my biggest cheerleader in the space, in this work. So many times he's out with his white colleagues and they're talking about black women's hair. He comes home and he's like, I don't know how, but you came up and we're talking about your like black women's hair, a bunch of white men at a table.
Wow.
Right? Like he gets it. And one thing that I do appreciate about him, and which is why so many black people love and appreciate him, I learned, was because he allows us to use his privilege. That's it.
That's something that I wouldn't say a lot of people would do in that position.
Yeah, and there are no limits to it. Sometimes I'm like, okay, Matt.
It's all right, you don't have to
step back a little bit, right? But he's never, that's how he shows up in this world, to support however he can. And if he has to use his resources and use what he was naturally given that the world deems as superior, he does. And he's not afraid to put it on the line. And I'm like, all right, cool.
I feel like Matt's gonna like fly out of the sky right now and hop into this.
Probably outside waiting for me right now.
Matt is like Superman, man. But that's amazing. Yeah. So what's the future like for Carmen Veal?
The future is honestly changing this narrative that black people are inferior, diversifying this lens so that black people can show up in every space with every other nationality and be respected and accepted for that, and lifting the black community to help them recognize they have the ability and the power to do so.
You're like Superwoman. Like seriously, this has been my favorite interview. Like, this has been great.
You've asked great questions.
Am I good at this?
You're great at this. You've done your research and you've asked great questions and you weren't afraid to ask them.
Right.
And I appreciate that, because if I'm not able to be vulnerable and my true transparent self, I'd rather not do it.
Right. I learned a lot too. I didn't realize how many hats you wore. You probably don't wear as much now. You probably delegated some tasks.
Not as much. Yeah, it's not as much as it used to be.
Yeah.
But I'm very deliberate and I'm very intentional about hiring people in positions to do things that's like busy work, so I can get out and do the work that I need to, like go shake hands and have discussions and make moves. I've learned, because I used to try and do it all myself.
Yeah. And you're good at executing. Like when you want something and you say you're gonna do something, like
I do it.
You do it like in 0.5 seconds. I respect that about you.
Thank you.
And you're resilient. And that's what I got from this interview. It was fun. Yeah. I actually enjoyed this.
Same.
Maybe they're part 2 or something.
Maybe, you know? I mean.
You know, let you build some more buildings up and we do this again.
Yeah.
Thank you. But yeah, so where can we reach you? All that social media stuff. This is where you look into that.
All right.
Right.
Hey, y'all. So anything related to brown skin women, you can go to Brown Skin Women on Instagram, on Facebook, brownskinwomen.com. My personal brand, though, is Carmen Veal, carmenveal.com. And that's how you find connection to everything else that I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a wrap.